I too would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. I would also like to thank Bluestar Intercultural Centre for the opportunity to meet with you today. This topic is of particular importance to my organisation, the Legal Aid Commission of the ACT, but also to me personally. I came to this country as a child and understand something of what it means and feels like to grow up as an immigrant. I also acknowledge Pedro Swalen, Ambassador of Switzerland. Thank you also for attending. Before commencing my address, I want to return for a moment to the acknowledgement of country, which you've heard 3 times now, because I think it sets an important benchmark for the way we should be going about our business here in Canberra. This acknowledgement is more than symbolism. Certainly it is an important way to show respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, but it is also to accept that these people have a different experience than others about what it's like and what it's like today to live in Australia. It is an acknowledgement of the appalling treatment by us and that their disadvantage continues in the present day. The topic I will speak about today is meeting the unique needs of the culturally, linguistically diverse communities in Australia today. I will explore the manner in which CALD communities in Australia need mainstream services to meet and help overcome their distinctive challenges in our contemporary nation. Though today I will be focusing upon the CALD community, we need to bear in mind that sometimes being different to the mainstream can lead to the kinds of disadvantages that have long been suffered by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Our challenge is how to meet the needs of the most vulnerable and disadvantaged people in our society, whoever they are. So let's start with the Charter of the Legal Aid ACT, and it's all about access to justice. The challenge posed in trying to achieve access to justice for everyone is not unique to our region, though I focus today on the difficulties faced by CALD people residing in the ACT. No doubt my comments should have resonance for Australia, but today I want to focus on where we live, on our community. So the purpose of Legal Aid ACT is to promote a just society in the Australian Capital Territory by ensuring that vulnerable and disadvantaged people receive the legal services they need to protect their rights and interests. Developing an improved community understanding of the law and seek reform of laws that adversely affect those we assist. We seek to achieve this purpose by delivering a range of high-quality legal services through our staff and professional partners in a caring manner that respects diversity and promotes confidence in the legal system. Legal Aid espouses a range of values in its relationships, service delivery, business processes and decision making. We are committed to helping disadvantaged people achieve justice. We respect people and their diversity. We value integrity and ethical conduct. We are accountable and committed to using learning and innovation to improve the quality of our service and the efficient use of resources. We work collaboratively with others to meet people's needs. We value and protect our statutory independence. Our vision is to be a leader in the delivery of legal services that are recognised for their excellence and for the caring, responsive and professional manner in which they are provided. Given these aims, it would seem evident that those in need of our assistance within ACT must include people from the CALD community, and I'll return, of course, to that in a moment. But that's our standard. So the Commission is on the front line of legal services to the community, and we emphasise this notion of frontline services. We're an independent statutory authority established under the Legal Aid Act 1977, charged with providing legal assistance in the Australian Capital Territory in accordance with that Act. While the Commission is accountable to the Commonwealth Government, and specifically to the ACT Attorney-General for the exercises of its statutory function, it operates a legal practice with a high degree of autonomy. This is necessary because of the Commission's duty to protect the legal rights and interests of individuals, many of whom are parties to actions by or against the executive branch of the government. While the work of the Commission must be undertaken in the broad context of government justice policy, as set out in our Act and the National Partnership Agreement for Legal Assistance, 2017-2020, the Commissioner's lawyers are required to observe the same rules and standards of professional conduct as private lawyers and are subject to the same professional duties. This means that their professional duties are owed to the court, the law and clients rather than to the executive government. We're clearly on the side of our clients, whoever they are. The Commission seeks to improve access by vulnerable and disadvantaged people to the justice system by providing a range of legal services through our own in-house legal and paralegal staff and lawyers in private practice. And in that context, you'll see a brochure which I encourage you to take on the way out. I'll return to that in a moment. The Commission helps people living in the ACT or those involved in proceedings in ACT courts and tribunals who are in need of legal advice or assistance but who are unable to access private legal services. And that's a lot of people. Our clients are therefore people who are disadvantaged relative to the general population. Disadvantage can take many forms, including lack of financial resources, disability, illness, youth or old age, homelessness, language or cultural barriers. The services provided by the Commission are wide-ranging and encompass the provision of information and referral, legal advice and legal assistance, advocacy, duty lawyer services at our courts, grants of legal assistance, dispute resolution services, community legal education programs and submissions on law reforms. We took just under 16,000 calls on our helpline last year. There's a lot of people wanting assistance. The Commission has a responsibility under the Act to make recommendations to the Attorney-General concerning law reform, and we play a significant role in that in the ACT. But let's be clear about the reality of services, the reality of these services. People who need legal assistance are usually stressed, upset and concerned. They are often angry and disappointed. They come to us because they have a legal problem, but this problem is usually linked to difficulties they face more broadly. The legal problem, and it is usually multiple problems, is just one aspect of a range of troubles they are likely to be facing, whether it's criminal, housing, domestic violence, financial concerns, mental health, it goes on. Before looking at a recent strategic initiative taken by the Commission to improve services to the CALD community, it is important to set out a few salient facts about our multicultural community here in the ACT. This is the kind of information that drives and should drive where we deliver our services. The 2011 census established, this won't be news for you, 24% of ACT's usual residents were born overseas. That was 86,000 people from 180 different countries. Over 59% of these people had lived in Australia for at least 15 years. Nearly 1/4 of overseas-born residents of the ACT arrived in Australia since 2005. Countries in Asia, including Afghanistan, Iran, India and China, now account for more than 39% of people born overseas. In addition, almost 44% of all ACT residents indicated that either their mother, their father or both parents were born overseas. Many of the ACT's overseas-born residents are recent arrivals, with 33% having arrived in Australia in the 10 years since 2011. In 2011, 19% of ACT residents aged 5 and over indicated they spoke a language other than English at home. Again in that year, 7% of ACT's usual residents identify with a religion other than Christianity. So, What do we learn from this? What we learn from this is that there is a large section of our population who are from a CALD background. This is significant. It must have implications for service delivery and how we go about our business. As the CEO of a mainstream organisation, I must ask, is this community of people, or communities of people I should say, accessing our services? As residents of the ACT, they are certainly eligible to do so. Our statistic indicated a few years ago that some were indeed coming to us for assistance, but scanning the horizon of legal services generally, there was nothing to indicate that they were going elsewhere or the kind of quality of service they were receiving. And given the nature of social disadvantage, it is more than probable that many people in that community would come within our fundamental remit to assist the most vulnerable and disadvantaged people here. Indeed, our surmise is supported by considerable research already undertaken around Australia. So, we felt on solid ground to explore ways in which we could better meet the unmet legal needs of the CALD community in the ACT. So, how is the Legal Aid Commission meeting the needs of the CALD community? Well, in a variety of ways, but I'd like to focus on the creation of our Cultural Liaison Unit. It's been going now for almost 18 months. And you'll see in that pamphlet details about the people who are delivering that service. In creating the Cultural Liaison Unit, we had two key strategies in mind. One, to look out and into the CALD community and to find ways of opening up our services, opening our doors and making people welcome. And two, to look inward at our staff and to ensure that we were able to respond appropriately and respectfully and sensitively to the individual needs of people within the CALD community, their individual needs. The Commission has had an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander liaison officer for well over 10 years, and the value of this kind of position and the work a liaison officer can do in a mainstream organisation is well established. So, could it work more broadly? Let's look at the service we now offer to the CALD community through this unit. It was established in 2016 to provide cultural liaison officers to guide people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds through legal processes. In fact, it does much more. The unit provides increased services to a range of CALD groups, in particular to Muslim communities and clients from Arabic-speaking backgrounds. In developing the unit, Legal Aid identified a gap in service delivery, being the need for a socio-legal service for the CALD community. This holistic and socio-legal means matching up legal and social needs of people. It means not taking the legal problem in isolation of what those needs of that person in their entirety are, or their family. This holistic wraparound service for CALD clients is the first of its kind in the ACT in a legal context, and nationally is not a strategy other legal aid commissions are currently using. The unit analyses their clients' problems and helps to develop solutions, including by providing information or referring the client to appropriate agencies. The unit advocates on clients' behalf to ensure they are receiving culturally appropriate services. They go to social security, they go to housing. A significant part of the CLO's role at Legal Aid ECT is to support women experiencing domestic and family violence who come from a CALD background. The unit also operates an outreach program aimed at developing stronger connections with the ACT's CALD community and better understanding of the problems the community faces. In addition, in partnership with the ANU, a migration clinic was commenced at the Commissioner's office every Thursday afternoon, and that's been going now for about 6 months, and it is constantly booked out. We also run a fortnightly clinic at Mars. The unit has a strong focus on raising awareness of cultural backgrounds and differences. This is a service different from any other being offered by a legal service in the ACT, as it connects with clients not by advertising its legal problems, but by connecting with the CALD communities on a personal level. That's the job of our liaison officers. The unit does this in a variety of ways, including by conducting cultural awareness training for legal aid staff, other service providers and students of the Australian National University and the University of Canberra, producing a weekly newsletter to legal aid staff, including a range of information about what is happening for CALD people in Canberra, across Australia and the world, being involved in CALD events such as Harmony Day and Refugee Week, and partnering with organisations aimed at assisting CALD communities, including Companion House, a non-government community-based organisation that works with adults and children who have sought safety in Australia following persecution, torture and war-related trauma, and the Red Cross and Mars, for example. In the period between December 2016, when the service started, and February of this year, the unit assisted 396 clients from 50 different countries. We held 73 outreach sessions that were undertaken at 10 different venues across the AT. All of these venues we'd never been to before, opening up a huge range of people. 21 community education sessions and 61 key stakeholder meetings were held. That is going out to key community organisations, finding the leaders in the community and talking with them personally about our services. This represents a 45 to 60% increase on targets set for 2016. I want to just, the whole range of people we've assisted, but I just want to talk to you about or describe two case studies. So, the background is this. Our client comes from a small village in Kashmir, which, as you know, is near Pakistan. Our client indicated that he is of the Muslim faith. He supports a large family living in that village. He was employed as a cook, cleaner under a contract. He lived in his employer's basement and his passport was taken from him on arrival. He worked up to 19 hours per day and never received a day off. He was not paid his wage in accordance with his employment contract. He was required to do extra duties, which included giving his employer and his employees' son a massage and helping his employer to dress. He was scared that if his employer was displeased with his work or if he complained that he would be sent back to Pakistan. If that happened, he may be killed and his family would be in danger. Well, what support did we provide? The unit contacted the Australian Federal Police Human Trafficking Team and the ACT Criminal Investigation Team to assess our client's situation. Liaison was made with the Salvation Army Human Trafficking Program to arrange emergency accommodation and relief funds for our client. We accompanied our client to the assessment and support team during this process. Our client was assessed as being a victim of human trafficking and was referred to the Red Cross. The unit assisted our client to purchase food and basic needs and ensure he was settled until Red Cross took over his long-term needs. The client received legal advice and in particular went to a migration clinic. That's clearly a wraparound service. Our client left his employment where his safety was jeopardised and relocated to Sydney, where he is being provided with intensive support. The other case study I'd like to draw to your attention relates to domestic violence. It was a client who was in a domestic violence relationship. Her ex-husband limited her access to education, employment and controlled the household income to the extent she was denied her human rights. He also insulted her, emotionally abused her and limited her contact with her mother. The client contacted the unit after leaving the house and separating from her husband. She had no accommodation and no income and cared for a 5-year-old daughter. She was threatened by her ex-husband that she would not be able to access the legal system on the basis that he was in a stronger position and has an income. So, what support did we provide? The unit arranged for her to get legal advice on domestic violence, family law and property settlement, and also apply for legal assistance. We have a specialist domestic violence unit that people can work with. The unit liaised with First Point, the ACT Women's Information Referral Service, and with domestic violence services to find her emergency accommodation. Contact was made with Centrelink and we assisted her to access a Centrelink payment. Migration advice was provided. The unit referred the client's daughter to counselling as she was struggling with the new situation and was affected by her experience with the domestic violence. They assisted her to access the ACT government return to work grant to undertake some study. The outcome, the client is studying to become a childcare educator and is planning on pursuing further studies to become a preschool educator. She is living with her daughter at a refuge, waiting on a housing ACT property. Her daughter is doing very well at school. She has legal representation and is planned to, in the long run, apply for her mother to come live within Australia. We need to have a place where people like this can come, and that's our intention. And there are many stories like this, often not as dramatic as these, but certainly as important. Okay, building the capacity of mainstream organisations. Let's now return to the second strategic aim I identified as key to the delivery of our services. We're looking outwards, how do we welcome people and bring them in? But to look inward at our staff and to ensure that we are able to respond appropriately, respectfully and sensitively to the individual needs of people within the CALD community. One of the things we did was undertake a staff survey. And we did this to gauge the understanding of our staff for a range of reasons. What was their understanding of Islam and the Muslim faith? Were most interested in learning more about these things. The survey was challenging. There are some three key findings I want to share with you today. The first I was very surprised about, but just over 40% of those interviewed, and nearly over half the people in my organisations were interviewed, 40% of those interviewed viewed Muslims favourably. 40%, not 80%, 40%. But almost a quarter of the people interviewed were uncomfortable with people of a CALD background. And over 80% had limited knowledge of Islam. Well, clearly from my point of view, this is ringing a lot of alarm bells, and our surmise that we needed to do some training was well proven. It was a surprising result, but important to expose this in a mainstream organisation. So what did we learn from the survey? Clearly that even within a legal aid organisation, there was much work to be done to upskill our staff to be able to provide services and practice law in culturally appropriate ways. That a mainstream organisation was deficient in these skills, I expect, will come as no surprise to people here today. But it was a challenge resulting for many of us in our organisation. It was hard to hear. All right. So what lessons have we learned about delivering service of the CALD community over the last 18 months? And I think the most fundamental lesson we have learned is that mainstream services are driven by predominant cultural values of our broader social structure, and that our services were not automatically equipped to meet the needs of CALD people. And I expect you'd find the same thing across the ATT and in the Commonwealth Government. Our observation is that these cultural values are replicated in our courts, in the police force and other social services, and indeed in the way most lawyers are practicing law in our legal system. There are always exceptions, of course. But if you're asking for trends, this is what we observe. It is not a question often that when people do come within the legal system, they're not receiving some services. That is, they're going through our legal system in the way other people would, even when accessing interpreters. But it is to say that the quality of service provided, because our system and our organisation is not culturally aware of the particular kinds of needs, is less effective than it otherwise should be. If our aim is to ensure that everyone is equal before the law, we need to provide lawyers and an organisation that is able to respond appropriately, respectfully, and with an understanding of the differences that cultural background bring in the way legal services should be administered. Indeed, we must learn to understand the diversity within the CALD community. This is not an homogenous community. In that context, our strategies must be refined so that we interact with the person taking into account their specific cultural background. We need to understand, For instance, that there may be different ways in which males and females are to be related to, that certain ways of expression are intrinsic to a cultural value and may not be obvious to someone outside that culture. We need to take into account that this will be exacerbated by language barriers and perhaps by education and literacy. We also need to understand that the experience of many CALD people in coming to our country is one in which they are not familiar or comfortable dealing with government agencies. They may be deeply affected by traumas that arise in other countries, and they will certainly be confronted and often mystified by the different way in which life might be lived within this country as compared to their own, and indeed the way our legal system operates. It will mean that they are likely to be suspicious of agencies and understandably mistrustful of the way they are being dealt with by those agencies. Indeed, it may mean that they feel they are not being treated fairly by our legal system, and that this will lead to distrust with both their own lawyers as well as the people with whom they are dealing, whether it's social services or the courts. Let me return to the point I made earlier in my address, in which I spoke about the importance of training our staff with the skills to properly assist people from a CALD background. The capacities of our staff are central to professional service delivery. In the end, all our staff need to have the individual capacity to deal with people of a CALD background in respectful and understanding manner. Whilst there is no panacea to how to achieve this in practice, all the evidence so far would indicate that working sensibly with our cultural liaison officers, with clients from a CALD background who are particularly disadvantaged, is one very good way that this gap can be breached. That is why enlivening staff understanding through training sessions, informal discussions, and ultimately integrating these expectations into personal performance plans will be ways in which we can ensure that all our staff are upskilled and are indeed aware of these issues. For those of you from a bureaucratic background, you'll know the importance of a personal performance plan in endeavouring to drive change in any bureaucratic environment. It sets our expectations of the staff and of the organisation, and it's all about, from my point of view, the leadership we can provide. At an individual level, we need to develop service methodologies in which the CALD client is able to openly and honestly provide the information that is necessary for us to give appropriate advice. When I first came to the Legal Aid Commissioner's office, it was a little bit like walking into a dentist's surgery. It was white. There were no coloured walls. There was not a lot of activity, mobility. We now have a splashed across our entrance, all our entrances, welcome in 10 different languages. We use colour. We talk about our client service unit up front. We're trying to make people feel comfortable from the moment they step into our door. This will mean we need to change the way that we go about our interviews and our general interaction with a person from a CALD background. I think it is reasonable to expect that in these circumstances it is likely that the eliciting of information will take longer time, and that we need to set up our interaction in an open and responsive way, including our own deportment and our own demeanour. Indeed, paying attention to the way we interview people in certain environments that make them feel more comfortable will be crucial. Being aware that someone may have undergone a very traumatic experience before they entered our country should mean that we are more mindful of how we approach any subject, particularly in relation to legal advice. In essence, we need to develop an interaction with the client which is based on trust and respect, so that they can tell their story and we can receive the information we need. That's how we give the best advice. As a mainstream organisation dealing with the CALD community, we need to place in the forefront of our considerations whether or not the cultural background of that person means that we will need to alter the way we go about providing our services. This is key for mainstream organisations. We can't do it in a monochrome way. We've got to be flexible and responsive to the particular person. We need to be asking questions of ourselves and of our cultural liaison officers before we approach any of the clients in need of assistance. That someone is from a CALD background, in short, will have and should have an impact on the way we go about conducting our business. We need to look carefully at the presentation of our office and the staff and ensure that there are multiple ways in which people of different ethnic and language backgrounds are able to access services. We need our information delivered in other languages and in a way that is plain and readily understood. This must include advanced training in how to work with interpreter services, whether it be over the telephone or in person. So in conclusion, in the Legal Aid ACT Strategic Plan 2007-2020, entitled On the Front Line of Legal Services to the Community, which was launched late last year, I said this: the Commission faces a range of challenges in ensuring the delivery of legal services to the most vulnerable and disadvantaged members of our community. The overall cost of providing services continues to increase while the demand for services grow. The Commission also faces having to meet emerging needs in the civil law area, including family and domestic violence, and in issues connected to elder abuse, and in extending services to people in culturally and linguistically diverse communities. In this context, the Commission intends to reallocate its resources to new priority client groups. So we're really spelling it out to everyone. The specific acknowledgement of the CALD community was quite deliberate, and we have directed considerable resources in the last year or more to that community. Unless the Commission's operating structure and practices embrace new and innovative modes of service delivery, our capacity to adequately respond to emerging client needs will be diminished. I'm talking about our cultural liaison unit. Limited public funding can have dire implications for our ability to provide access to justice for an increasingly large cohort of people unable to afford legal representation. The challenge faced by mainstream organisations is not just to recognise the specific needs of CALD people, but find ways to accommodate their different needs within our service structures. Utilising strategies that allow us to close the justice gap to provide support to more people who currently fall outside legal aid means tests should be consistent with, in fact it is consistent with Productivity Commission and New South Wales Law Foundation findings around legal need, and though problematic on a limited budget, certainly a worthwhile aim for all legal aid commissions. It may be that we can best tackle legal need, including that of CALD communities, by better refining our priorities, for example in relation to primary victims of violence and children, making better connections between the domestic violence unit in the Magistrates Court and the care and protection matters in the Children's Court, and with family law proceedings in the Family Court. The Commission, as a mainstream organisation, will best be able to meet the needs of CALD people where we have systems in place that do not alienate, frustrate, confuse or offend the person seeking our assistance. And, crucially, where we have staff upskilled in their capacity to provide services to CALD communities. Only in this way can a mainstream organisation such as ours meet and help overcome the distinctive challenges of providing services to the CALD community in our contemporary nation. To paraphrase, there is no wrong door and everyone is welcome. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
We can move on to questions if anybody has anything to ask.
Thank you, John, for the wonderful delivery. Congratulations, well done. And also well done for the special targeting for the CALD community. We have a special liaison group. Sam Longside, I'm the former chair for the Canberra Horticultural Community Forum, which is the peak organisation representing Canberra CALD community. Yeah. If I may just make probably a little bit lesser than positive remarks. You mentioned that you have contact so far for many years with Mars up in the Canberra Horticultural Centre building. Our office is just about maybe 20 yards away.
Yeah.
Now, for your information, Mars has been targeted, funded, is for recent arrival and refugees. All the other existing older migrants like myself was not in their radar for quite some time. I can speak with a bit of authority because I used to be the chair in the 90s
Yeah.
for the migrant resource centers. The things have changed. And therefore, you talk about the client supported through MAS, we talk about less than 500. For them, I mean, it's the record still. But interesting enough, the rest of, you mentioned the demographic with the Canberra multicultural community, is nearly a quarter or more. That's the part that I must apologize or somehow have not heard anything publicity through you directly, which I'm very happy to listen to the Bluestar people organize this wonderful deliberation that I start to know exactly all the work we do in public. Certainly I will research you as an individual, which is very thoughtful and also very congratulate work being done. But in terms of publicity, about for the whole of community, I think we need can be improved, and we are happy to help you in the future, provide that as we have over nearly 150 organizations under our belt, and we look after the insurance as well for public liability. Therefore, we might need some help from you to help us some legal something. But we are here to work with you, the Canberra Multicultural Community Forum, and if I may say so, the ACT government has not actually brought up as comprehensively the work you guys doing to the CALD community for the past 15 years. I've been around here for 45 years. And therefore I could say to you that the ACT government, either through the Community Safety Directorate or through the Multicultural Affair, they have not actually brought out comprehensively the good work you guys have been doing. And therefore, again, on that note, I'd like to thank Bluestar for bringing up today, and I learned something so much. And thank you for your dedication, your unit, and also your staff helping the CALD community. Thank you very much indeed.
Fine, and look, thank you for your comment, and I welcome the development of partnerships. We'd, a couple of years ago, we'd employed a Zimbabwean man to help young African men to receive our services, and that was the start of us trying to find ways in which we could meet the needs of particular sections of the community. We soon learned that, as you've just said, that there was a whole broader range of issues, and in the context that I don't need to spell out, it was very clear that Muslims from Arabic-speaking background were likely to need some particular sections of the past 18 months. And we engaged both Zuhair and Engie, Zuhair's from Syria, Engie is from Egypt, to develop a focus with Muslim Arabic speakers. They soon pushed that focus out, and we've done this without any additional funding, I might add. We've just found it within our budget. So it's always a problem for us. The more we advertise, the more work we get. 5 years ago, we got 9,000 calls on the helpline. Last year, just less than 16,000. We haven't had any additional funding to support that. So we're looking for partnerships, and we welcome partnerships. We want to advertise, we want people to come in, and we'll keep pushing ahead as much as we can. So thank you for those comments. One of the problems with legal aid is, meeting need. It's very difficult. It's just that justice gap is so low, and there are so many people.
Thank you, Dr. Boersig, for your wonderful presentation, and especially in your leadership in this space and how to work better with people from a CALD background. I'm Liz Brown. I'm a panel solicitor for migration, so provided to legal aid. I can certainly vouch for how wonderful it has been to work with your cultural liaison officer, Zuhair, and also Erin as well, who was in charge of the migration clinic, currently on secondment. And they have just been wonderful and responsive and flexible, open to new ideas, and discussing the best way to work with this cohort of clients, especially in the refugee and asylum seeking space. So I just encourage you that in terms of considering what sort of training would be beneficial to your staff to help them work better with the CALD community, could you also include the broader legal community, so lawyers on your legal panel as well?
Yeah.
discussion. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent suggestion because sometimes we have to outsource our work. It's wonderful to hear. I mean, for anyone who works within bureaucracy, you know how hard it is to engender a responsive service. It's just so I'm very pleased to get that feedback. Doesn't surprise me. We've got two outstanding individuals there. We need to mainstream the way we do this work. That is, we need to ensure that being responsive and culturally appropriate is an integral part of our service delivery, because that's what mainstreaming means. So I agree thoroughly that we need to ensure that training is provided to all our staff so it becomes second nature. I mean, I worked for 10 years in the Aboriginal Legal Services at the start of my career. We worked hand in hand with Aboriginal field officers. They bridged gaps that I wasn't able to bridge. So we need to develop this kind of a service methodology. And I'll take on board in relation to the wider legal sphere for exactly the reasons you say.
Any other comments or questions?
I just might make one comment about our staff, and that 3 years ago we had 3 people from a CALD background in the Legal Aid Commission. And that was 4% of our staff. We now have 12 people and it's 15% of our staff. And I think internally we're speaking about 10 different languages. So that's the kind of thing that mainstream organisations need to aspire to diversity their own staffing as well. Thank you.